Madhav. I can't hear you. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava
Kunja Bihari
Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Jaganaranjana
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana
Yamunatira Vanachari
Yamuna Tira Vanachari
Jaya Radha
Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari
Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana
Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Vallabha Girivaradhari
Hare
Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Soni Mataji and Shashwin Prabhu, for doing the Radha Madhava. We now move on to Om Namo Bhagavate Shashwin, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, and then the two shlokas, and then we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, which is the passing away of Bhishmadev. So you will read text 6 and 7 for us, Shashwin Prabhu, please. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Parvati
Om Namo Bhagavate
Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayeshva Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shlokir Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. Parvato Narado Daumyo Bhagavan Badarayana Brihadasvo Bharadvaja Sasisyo Renukasuta Vasishta Indra Brahmadas Trito Grit Samadosita Kaksivan Gautamo Trischa Kausikota Sudarsana. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Soni Mataji, would you like to do the word-to-word translation and some part of the purport, and then I will continue after that. It's a long purport today. Hare
Yes,
Krishna.
Mataji. Hare Krishna. Word to word. Parvata
Parvata
Muni.
Parvata Muni,
Narad
Narad
Muni.
Narad Muni,
Narad Muni,
Domya
Soumya,
Soumya,
Bhagavan, incarnation of Godhead.
Bhagavan,
Bhagavan, incarnation of Godhead.
Badarayana Vyasadeva.
Badarayana
Vyasadeva,
Vyasadeva.
Brahadasva
Brahadashva,
Brahadashva.
Bharadvaja
Bharadvaja.
Sasisya along with the disciples.
Sasishya along with
disciples,
Renuka Sutta Parashuram.
Renuka
Parashuram.
Vasistha
Vashishta,
Vashishta.
Indrapramada
Indrapramada.
Trita
Trita.
Samadaha.
Gritsamada.
Mata,
Thank you, Sashi. Asita
Ashita,
Asita.
Kakshivan
Shivan,
Kakshivan.
Gautama
Gautama.
Atri
Atri,
Atri.
Cha and
And
Kaushika
Kaushika,
Kaushika.
Atha as well as
Ata as well.
Ata as well as
Sudarshana
Sudarshana.
Translation. All the sages like Parvata Muni, Narad, Domya, Vyasa, the incarnation of God, okay, that's a tough one.
Dasva,
Bharadvaja and Parashuram and disciples Vashista, Indrapramada, Trita, Gretsamada, Asita, Kaksivan, Gautama, Atri, Koshika, and Sudarshana were present. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Parvata Muni is considered to be one of the oldest sages. He is almost always a constant companion of Narad Muni. They're also spacemen competent to travel in the air without the help of any material vehicle. Parvata Muni is also Devarshi, or the great sage amongst the demigods, like Narada. He was present along with Narada at the sacrificial ceremony of Maharaja Janamejaya, son of Maharaja Parikshit. In this sacrifice, all the snakes of the world were to be killed. Parvata Muni and Narada Muni were called Gardhavas, also because they can travel in the air singing the glories of the Lord. Since they can travel in the air, they observed Draupadi's Swayamvara ceremony in selecting her own husband from the air. Like Narada Muni, Parvata Muni also used to visit the royal assembly in the heaven of King Indra. As a Gardhava, sometimes he visited the royal assembly of Kuvera, one of the important demigods. Both Narada and Parvata were once in trouble with their daughter of Maharaja Srinjaya. Maharaja Srinjaya got the benediction of a son by Parvata Muni. Narad Muni is inevitably associated with the narrations of the Puranas. He is described in the Bhagavatam. In his previous life, he was the son of a maidservant, but by good association of pure devotees, he became enlightened with devotional service. And in the next life, he became a perfect man comparable with himself only. In the Mahabharata, his name is mentioned in many places. He is the principal Devarshi, or the chief sage among the demigods. He is the son and disciple of Brahmaji, and from him the disciplic succession in the line of Brahma has been spread. He initiated Prahlad Maharaj, Dhruva Maharaj, and many celebrated devotees of the Lord. He initiated even Vyasadeva, the author of the Vedic literatures, and from Vyasadeva, Madhvacharya was initiated, and thus the Madhva Sampradaya, in which the Gaudiya Sampradaya is also included, has spread all over the universe. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belonged to this Madhva Sampradaya. Therefore, Brahmaji, Narad, Vyasa, down to Madhva, Chaitanya, and the Goswamis all belonged to the same line of disciplic succession. Naradji has instructed many kings from time immemorial. In the Bhagavatam, we can see that he instructed Prahlad Maharaj while he was in the womb of his mother, and he instructed Vasudeva, father of Krishna, as well as Maharaja Yudhishthira. Mataji, you can continue, or someone else can.
Okay, I'll take over. And then after I stop Arya Govind Prabhu, will you be able to continue?
Yes, Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Dhaumya, a great sage who practiced severe penances at Uchchakaya Tirtha, was appointed royal priest of the Pandava king. He acted as a priest in many religious functions of the Pandavas, samskara, and also each of the Pandavas was attended by him at the betrothal of Draupadi. He was present even during the exile of the Pandavas and used to advise them in circumstances when they were perplexed. He instructed them how to live incognito with one ear, and his instructions were strictly followed by the Pandavas during that time. His name is mentioned also when the general funeral ceremony was performed after the battle of Kurukshetra. In the Ansuya Parva of Mahabharata, 127.15 to 16, he gave very elaborate religious instructions to the Maharaja Yudhishthira. He was actually the right type of priest of a householder, for he could guide the Pandavas on the right path of religion. The priest is meant for guiding the householder progressively in the right path of the ashram dharma or the occupational duty of a particular caste. There is practically no difference between the family priest and the spiritual master. The sages, saints, and brahmanas were especially meant for the same functions. Bhadrayana Vyasadeva. He is known as Krishna. Krishna Daivpayana, Satvayata Sutta, Parasharya, Parasharathmaja, Bhadravana, Vedavyasa, etc. He was the son of Mahamuni Parashara in the womb of Satyavati prior to her betrothal with Maharaja Santanu, the father of the great general grandfather Bhishmadeva. He is powerful incarnation of Narayana, and he broadcasts the Vedic wisdom to the world. As such, Vyasadeva is offered respects before one chants the Vedic literature, especially the Puranas. Sukadeva Goswami was his son, and rishis like Vaishampayana were his disciples for different branches of the Vedas. He is the author of great epic Mahabharata and great transcendental literature, Bhagavatam. The Brahma Sutras, the Vedanta Sutras, or Badarayana Sutras were compiled by him. Among sages, He's the most respected author by dint of severe penances. When he wanted to record the great epic Mahabharata for the welfare of all the people in the age of Kali, he was feeling the necessity of a powerful writer who could take up his dictation. By the order of Brahmaji, Sri Ganeshji took up the charge of noting down the dictation on the condition that Vyasadeva would not stop dictation for a moment. The Mahabharata was thus compiled by the joint endeavor of Vyasa and Ganesha. By the order of his mother Satyavati, who was later married to Maharaj Santanu, and by the request of Bhishma Deva, the eldest son of Maharaja Santanu, for his first wife, the Ganges, the Ganga, he begot three brilliant sons whose names are Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. The Mahabharata was compiled by Vyasadeva after the battle of Kurukshetra and after the death of all the heroes of Mahabharata. It was first spoken in the royal assembly of Maharaj Janamejaya, the son of Maharaj Parikshit. Hridasva, an ancient sage who used to meet Maharaj Yudhishthir now and then. First of all, he met Maharaj Yudhishthir at Kamyavana. The sage narrated the history of Maharaj Nala. There is another Hridashva who is the son of Ikshavu dynasty. Mahabharatwana Parna 209, 4-5. Ari Govind Prabhu, kindly take over.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you. Bharadwaja, he is one of the 7 great rishis and was present at the time of the birth ceremony of Arjuna. The powerful rishi sometimes undertook severe penances and on the shore of the Ganges, and his ashrama is still celebrated as Prayagadhama. It is learned that this rishi, while taking bath in the Ganges, happened to meet Gritachi, one of the beautiful society girls of heaven, and thus he discharged semen which was kept and preserved in an earthen pot and from which Drona was born. So Dronacharya is the son of Bharadwaja Muni. Others say that Bharadwaja, the father of Drona, is a different person from Maharshi Bharadwaja. He was a great devotee of Brahma. Once he approached Dronacharya and requested him to stop the battle of Kurukshetra. Parashurama or Renuka Sutta, he is the son of Maharshi Jamadagni and Srimati Renuka. Thus, he is also known as Renuka Sutta. He is one of the powerful incarnations of God, and he killed the Kshatriya community as a whole 21 times. And with the blood of the Kshatriyas, he pleased the souls of his forefathers. Later on, he underwent severe penances at the Mahendra Parvata. After taking the whole earth from the Kshatriyas, he gave it in charity to Kashyapa Muni. Parashurama instructed the Dhanur Veda, or the science of fighting, to Dronacharya because he happened to be a Brahmana. He was present during the coronation of Maharaja Yudhishthira and when he celebrated the function along with other rishis. Parashurama is so old that he met both Rama and Krishna at different times. He fought with Rama, but he accepted Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. He also praised Arjuna when he saw him with Krishna. When Bhishma refused to marry Amba, who wanted him to become her husband, Amba met Parashurama, and by her request only, he asked Bhishma as his wife. Bhishma refused to obey his order. Although he was one of the spiritual masters of Bhishma Deva, Parashurama fought with Bhishma Deva when Bhishma neglected his warning. Both of them fought very severely, and at last Parashurama was pleased with Bhishma and gave him the benediction of becoming the greatest fighter in the world. Mataji, can I continue?
Would anybody else like to continue? Okay, Prabhuji, kindly continue. If you're tired, you can stop and I can continue after that.
Vasishtha, the great celebrated sage among the Brahmanas, well known as the Brahmrishi Vasishtha Deva, he is a prominent figure in both the Ramayana and Mahabharata periods. He celebrated the coronation ceremony of personality of Goddess Sri Rama. He was present also on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He could approach all the higher and lower planets, and his name is also connected with the history of Hiranyakashipu. There was a great tension between him and Vishwamitra, who wanted his Kamadhenu, wish fulfilling cow. Vasishtha Muni refused to spare his Kamadhenu, and for this Vishwamitra killed his 100 sons. And as a perfect Brahmana, he tolerated all the taunts of Vishwamitra. Once he tried to commit suicide on account of Vishwamitra's torture, but all his attempts were unsuccessful. He jumped from a hill, but the stones on which he fell became a stack of cotton, and thus he was saved. He jumped into the ocean, but the waves washed him ashore. He jumped into the river, but the river also washed him ashore. Thus, all his suicide attempts were unsuccessful. He is also one of the 7 rishis and husband of Arundhati, the famous star. Indrapramada, another celebrated rishi, Tirtha, one of the 3 sons of Prajapati Gautama, he was the 3rd son, and his other 2 brothers were known as Ekat and Dvita. All the brothers were great sages and strict followers of the principles of religion. By the dint of severe penances, they were promoted to Brahmaloka, the planet where Brahmaji lives. Once Tirtha Muni fell into a well. He was an organizing worker of many sacrifices, and as one of the great sages, he also came to show respect to Bhishmaji at his deathbed. He was one of the 7 sages in the Varunaloka. He hailed from the western countries of the world. As such, most probably he belonged to the European countries. At that time, the whole world was under one Vedic culture. Dhritamada, one of the sages of heavenly kingdom, he was a close friend of Indra, the king Indra of heaven, and was a great as great as Brihaspati. He used to visit the royal assembly of Maharaja Yudhishthira, and he also visited the place where Bhishma Deva breathed his last. Sometimes he explained the glories of Lord Shiva before Maharaja Yudhishthira. He was the son of Vitahavya, and he resembled in features of the body of Indra. Sometimes the enemies of Indra mistook him to be Indra and arrested him. He was a great scholar of the Rig Veda, and thus he was highly respected by the Brahmana community. He lived a life of celibacy and was powerful in every respect.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, Mataji.
Panchali Mataji can continue. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you very much. Asita. There was a king of the same name, but herein the Asita mentioned is the Asita Devala Rishi, a great powerful sage of the time. He explained to his father 150000 verses from the Mahabharata. He was one of the members in the snake sacrifice of Maharaja Janmajaya. He was also present during the coronation ceremony of Maharaja Yudhishthira, along with the other great rishis. He also gave Maharaja Yudhishthira instructions while he was on the Ajnana hill. He was also one of the devotees of Lord Shiva. Kakshivan, one of the sons of Gautama Muni and the father of the great sage Chanda Kausika. He was one of the members of the parliament of Maharaja Yudhishthira. Atri Muni was a great Brahmana sage and was one of the mental sons of Brahmaji. Brahmaji is so powerful that simply by thinking of a son, he can have it. These sons are known as Manasa Putras. Out of the 7 Manasa Putras of Brahmaji and out of the 7 great Brahmana sages, Atri was one. In his family, the great Prachetas were also born. Atri Muni had 2 Kshatriya sons who became kings. King Artama is one of them. He is counted as one of the 21 Prajapatis. His wife's name was Anusuya, and he helped Maharaja Parikshit in his great sacrifices. Kaushika, one of the permanent rishi members of the royal assembly of Maharaja Yudhishthira. He sometimes met Lord Krishna. There are several other sages of the same name. Sudarshana, This wheel, which is accepted by the personality of Godhead, Vishnu or Krishna, as his personal weapon, is the most powerful weapon, greater than the Brahmastras or similar other disastrous weapons. In some of the Vedic literatures, it is said that Agni Deva, the fire god, presented this weapon to Lord Sri Krishna, but factually, this weapon is eternally carried by the Lord. Agni Deva presented this weapon to Krishna in the same way that Rukmini was given by Maharaja Rukma to the Lord. The Lord accepts such presentations from his devotees, even though such presentations are eternally his property. There is an elaborate description of this weapon in the Adi Parva of the Mahabharata. Lord Sri Krishna used this weapon to kill Shishupala, a rival of the Lord. He also killed Shalva by this weapon, and sometimes he wanted his friend Arjuna to use it to kill his enemies. Mahabharata, Virata Parva 56.3. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much, Soni Mataji, Arya Govind Prabhuji, and Panchali for reading the purport. Shashwin, is it possible for you to do the Manglacharan and then we can introduce Mataji? Shashwin? Okay. Shashwin? We can't hear you. Hare Chakshurmilitam yena tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. Shri
Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamaya
Mayam Tadanti Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru
Shrita Padakamalam
Malam.
Shri Guru
Vaishnavam Shcha Shri Rupam Sakrajadam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Satvedam Swavadudam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Pada Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Satvedam Swavadudam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Kopisha Kopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanushtute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kirpa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gauravastravrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Shashwin, for the wonderful Manglacharan recital. So Hare Krishna, everybody. We have a new mentor for us today. She's Adi Ganga Mataji, and I'll just give a brief introduction of Mataji. Mataji has worked in the corporate world for 20 years, and recently retrained as a teacher. She became attracted to Krishna consciousness when she came to the program called Soul Expressions at the Manor 7 years ago, which introduced her to Kirtan and the lovely tasty prasadam. She became hooked on spiritual practice. She loves reading Srila Prabhupada's books and discussing the Bhagavad Gita in several Gita discussion groups. She has attended numerous courses at the School of Bhakti, including Bhakti Shastri, and later joined the Bhakti Vriksha Sangha group. She also gives Gita classes and facilitates courses at the Manor. So we are really, really fortunate to have Adi Ganga Mataji. Mataji, it's been a long purport, but we now hand over to you and we'll just mute our mics now. Hare Krishna, welcome to the group. It's a small group, Mataji, but we meet every day. I'd also like to acknowledge the presence of one of our mentors, Kamal Panchal. Prabhuji, thank you for joining in and encouraging us. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you so much for doing the lovely prayers and for reading that very long purport so nicely. And thank you for allowing me to join you on a very special day. It's the disappearance day of Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya. And if we get time later on, I'll speak a bit more about his passing because it is relevant to this wonderful verse. But for now, I'll speak about the sages collectively, as we probably won't have time to go through them all. There are 16 sages in the purport and verse, including the Sudarshan Chakra. So perhaps we can just home in on one or two pastimes. Then I thought it would be good to focus on the exalted position of Bhishma Dev and also look at what lessons we can learn in preparing for our own passing when we come to it. So just to say that you've been hearing about chapter 9, which is covering the passing of Bhishma Dev. And so far in the verses, we've been hearing about some of the wonderful personalities who congregated around Bhishma Dev on his deathbed, on the bed of arrows at Kurukshetra. So, you know, this is Yudhishthira Maharaj, who was actually feeling very aggrieved at causing so many deaths on the battlefield at this point. And also the rest of the Pandavas, and of course Krishna. In the beginning verses of the chapter, they describe how they appeared by Bhishma Dev's bed of arrows and bowed before him. And so when we come to this verse, verses 6 and 7, we have some descriptions of sages and priests of the highest order who were also present there. So we have this great list of names that we've just read through. And this is quite significant. So we've been given these names not just to record who was present for historical purposes, but actually these names are very purifying. Hearing them and recalling the past times, you know, also elevates our own consciousness. And so it's nice for us to go through some of these pastimes and learn lessons from it. Prabhupada in the purports has very nicely and crisply covered many pastimes involving the sages in the purports. And I was wondering, can anyone remember any other pastimes that involves one or two of these sages? Perhaps Narad Muni or Vyasadeva, as they are two of the most well-known. Can anyone remember them? No? Well, the one I remember is about Narad Muni and the hunter Mirgari. So, you know, you may have heard the story, and I'll just keep it short for the purposes of time, but Narad Muni had come to Prayag to bathe in the confluence of the rivers Yamuna and the Ganga. And he saw some half-dead animals lying around in the forest, and they were suffering great pain. And so Narad then came upon the hunter Mirgari and saw that he was responsible. And he asked him why he was leaving the animals in pain, why not just kill them outright and their suffering. And Mirgari said, well, this is the way I've been taught by my father. This is the way I've always done it. And so Narad then explains to Mrgari the hunter that leaving the animals half dead was committing a sin. It was actually very offensive. And he would have to suffer the pain that he had caused in his next birth. And so he advised him, you know, he was acting as his spiritual master actually. He advised him that, you know, break your bow, build a small cottage, plant tulsi, and, you know, give up this livelihood. And Mrgari wasn't convinced. He was worried about how he would earn a living. And Narad Muni told him that, you know, kind of everything would be provided for if he just chanted Hare Krishna, the Maha Mantra. And as he advised, you know, kind of in the nearby villages, news had spread that this hunter had become a great devotee. And so people came to visit him and offer him grains and fruit, everything that he needed. And so then Narad Muni, along with his friend Barbata Muni, who's also mentioned in this verse, came to visit Mrgari, and they saw how he was now so carefully avoiding the ants as he was coming towards them. And he was carefully stepping, you know, avoiding stepping on them. And Narad Muni marveled that a hunter who would cause so much pain, who didn't care about the suffering of animals, who would leave them half dead, was taking care of even the ants. So that is the power of a spiritual master. You know, by his grace, by his mercy, by his instruction, we can actually come out from, you know, some of the most abominable situations and actually perfect our lives. So it's a very, very powerful pastime. And one other pastime I remember that involves Vyasadeva, who is Narad Muni's disciple. And he was the original author of the Vedas, the major Vedic texts. And after writing them all, he had somehow he was still not satisfied. And the reason was that in all the literatures, he wrote about so many nice topics. He wrote about the universe and prayers to the demigods and how to acquire our material necessities and information about the Brahman, the soul, the super soul. But what he hadn't touched on was that he didn't include any detailed descriptions of God, who is the source of everything, the source of all these things. He didn't talk about God, his form, his pastimes, his energies, his potencies. So that actually shows that, you know, kind of we need to include God in the center of our lives. And so after explaining this perplexing situation to Narad Muni, he was advised to write the Srimad Bhagavatam, and which is also called the Bhagavad Purana, and it contains all the pastimes of Krishna. So even if we make a pious endeavor, however pious it may be, if we leave God out, then, you know, we won't be happy. So some of the names of these sages you might have come across in the Bhagavad Gita. So when I was reading this purport, the verse in the 8th chapter, I think it's the 5th verse in the 8th chapter, stood out, and some of these sages are mentioned. So I'll just read the translation of Bhagavad Gita 8.5. Arjun said, he's talking to Krishna, "You are the supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode and purifier, the absolute truth, and the eternal divine person. You are the primal God, transcendental and original, and you are the born, unborn, and all-pervading beauty. All the great sages, such as Narad, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa, proclaim this of you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me." So here we have some of these sages mentioned, as well as very renowned sages. And in that verse, Arjun had accepted Krishna, not just as his maternal cousin, not just as his spiritual master, but actually as the supreme personality of Godhead. And he's saying that, well, it's not just me who's come to this conclusion, but it's been validated by sages such as these, you know, Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa, who also proclaim Krishna to be the supreme. So the passing of Bhishmadev was such an important episode that these great exalted personalities and sages all congregated around him. So why did they assemble around Bhishma Dev? What was so special about Bhishma? Does anyone know? Would they like to hazard a guess?
Mataji, Bhishma Dev is one of the Mahajan, and they wanted to know what he was going to say. So they were really interested in that.
Absolutely. Bhishma Dev is one of the Mahajans who attracted so many legendary people to his deathbed. And with all these icons present, Bhishma Dev gave a wonderful parting speech. And I won't go too much into the speech because I think that's going to come up in future verses. So yes, so he was one of the Mahajans, so one of the great personalities. Does anyone know any of the other Mahajans? And any of the other 12?
Mataji, Lord Shiva.
Yes, Lord Shiva, absolutely. Thank you so much. He was the most supreme Vaishnava of all the devotees of the Lord. Yes, Mataji, you have your hand up.
Janak Raja.
Which one, sorry?
Janak Raja.
Yes, King Janak, absolutely. So he's the king of Mithila and the father of Sita and the father-in-law of Lord Ram. Thank you, Mataji.
4
And
Kumara.
Sorry, I'll go to Arya Govinda Das, then I'll go back to Mataji on the iPhone. Arya Govinda Das Prabhu.
4 Kumaras.
4 Kumaras, thank you so much. They were the perfect brahmacharis. And Mataji?
Yamraj.
Yamraj, absolutely. So he's the one who's like a magistrate, and he records all our pious and impious deeds, and he decides our next birth, you know, based on what we've done. So that's good. I think we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. Prahlad Maharaj, yes, Prabhu, absolutely. Prahlad Maharaj, who is famous at 5 years old for being such an amazing devotee, even when he was being persecuted by his own father, Hiranyakashipu.
I can't remember exactly, Mataji, but was it also his grandson Bali Maharaj?
Yes,
Narada Muni?
absolutely. Yes, Bali Maharaj, who kind of gave up his kingdom, who kind of gave up the 3 worlds, and who offered the Lord in the form of Vamnadev his own head. So that's a nice form of surrender. So yes, thank you for that.
Narada.
Yes, Narad, definitely. So yeah, some of the Mahajans are present even at Bhishma Dev's passing.
Kapila Muni.
Kapila Muni, yes. So he's the son of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, and he's known as the perfect son.
Shuka.
Shukadev Goswami, yes, who's the son of Vyasadev, and who of course spoke Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. And I think we've had
Swambhuva Manu.
one more. Yes, Swambhuva Manu, actually, he was the first Mahajan, and he was the father of Devahuti and grandfather of Dhruv Maharaj. So I think we've got all of them now. Yeah, thank you. Well done. 10 out of 10. Yes, big clap. So yeah, so Bhishma Dev is one of these Mahajans. He's very selfless, actually. He became a brahmachari. He gave up his right to the throne so that the future sons of his father's second wife, Satyavati, would inherit the throne. He said he would never get married or have children that would be a threat. And as a result, his father gave him the boon that he could die whenever he wished. So, so one thing crossed my mind, actually. If Bhishma was such a Mahajan, my question would be, why did he choose the wrong side? You know, why was he not on Krishna's side? You know, obviously these Mahajans are exalted personalities and they are surrendered servants of the Lord. So why do you think he might have actually chosen the side of the Kauravas?
He was obligated to them because he ate their food, and then he was cleansed after, I think, was it when Arjuna shot a bow at him on the Mahabharata war, when he was cleansed at that time?
Yeah, actually, that's interesting that you say he was cleansed, because yes, I heard that he was financially obligated to Duryodhan. He and Dronacharya, you know, kind of Duryodhan was looking after them financially, so he felt obliged to, you know, give his loyalty to Duryodhan, even though he didn't agree with what was happening to the Pandavas. But I didn't hear that he was cleansed actually after eating his food. That's very interesting, Mataji. Thank you. Banchli Mataji.
No, Krishna Mataji, was it because of the vow that he had given to Satyavati, his father, that he would always protect the person who was on the crown? Dhritarashtra and the Kauravas were the rulers at the time, and his allegiance stayed with them throughout. And despite the fact that he was one of the greatest of devotees and he knew the right and the righteous were on the other side, he still had to be on the Kaurava side because of his vow.
Absolutely. I think you're right there. I have heard that argument that he was, you know, kind of, he had to protect the crown. And so even though, you know, Dhritarashtra had sort of taken the crown in a sort of quite an unjust way, he wouldn't give it back to the Pandavas when they came of age. His vow was to protect the crown. So that is one reason why he was fighting on their side. Yeah, that's very, thank you. That's very nicely offered, Mataji. Arya Govinda Prabhu?
Hare Krishna Mataji. He wanted to see Krishna in the front as a devotee of Krishna.
He
because
wanted
if he was on the side of Krishna, he would have, you know, not seen Krishna in front of him.
Ah, so do you mean when you say he wanted to see Krishna in front, he wanted to actually fight with him as an opponent? And
Yes.
yeah, that's very interesting, actually. That really could be it, actually, because sometimes some of these exalted personalities, like Advaita Acharya comes to mind, and you know, Lord Chaitanya, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, kept giving him so much respect because he was so elderly. And actually then he did something that allowed Lord Chaitanya to chastise him, and he said, thank you, I just want to be chastised by you. So it could be that same kind of mood, couldn't it? You know, sort of that I don't just want to treat you as a friend, I want to see your prowess, because, you know, Bhishmadev was a Kshatriya, you know, through and through, the most powerful warrior. And, you know, and he actually went to Vaikuntha Loka, not Krishna Loka. You know, he was actually sort of, you know, very beholden to Lord Narayan because he was a Kshatriya actually, and he wanted that kind of awe and reverence. So yeah, thank you very much for offering that. Those are wonderful, wonderful answers. I actually looked up Radhanath Swami's article on this, and he mentions that, you know, Bhishmadev was on the wrong side because this was Krishna's will. So Bhishmadev was the most powerful, the most unconquerable warrior in the world. And through him, Krishna wanted to impart the lesson that even the greatest person, even a Mahajan, will be defeated if he is not on the side of Dharma, if he does not do the right thing. So, you know, kind of Bhishma is full of humility that, you know, he is on the wrong side because Krishna wills that. You know, he obviously, why would an exalted personality such as him not speak up for Draupadi in that assembly, kind of where she was being stripped? You know, kind of even a woman these days, if you strip her naked, that even in Kali Yuga, that's just, you know, kind of abhorrent. So it is Krishna's will that, you know, kind of he stood by, that the war happened, and he found himself on the wrong side. So yeah, as well as being selfless, he is actually full of humility to be the Lord's instrument. He's misunderstood and criticized for that decision, for his decision to fight the Kurus, but, you know, the Lord wanted these lessons to play out, so that's what he did. So at this point, Bhishmadev is facing his death, which is the final examination of our lives, and all of us are tested at the point of death. And what is that test? What are we being tested on? So that test is, have we done enough in our lifetimes to attain the supreme destination. So Bhishma Dev was going to Vaikuntha Loka, and the symptom of a pure devotee like him is that they remain undisturbed and fixed in devotional service, even as they go through the process of death, which I hear that, you know, kind of is quite disturbing to the mind. It's quite disturbing when the soul leaves the body, but, you know, pure devotee remains undisturbed. And as we go on in this chapter from about verse 12, we'll see that Bhishma Dev is completely peaceful. He's full of clarity. You know, he's not confused. He's not tormented. He sympathizes with his nephews, even though he was fighting on the other side. And he gives wonderful instructions to Yudhishthira Maharaj about accepting Krishna's will and surrendering to Krishna. So he's so glad to see that Yudhishthira Maharaj will be throned as the emperor of the universe. So he's decided to die in such wonderful circumstances, you know, on the battlefield as an exalted warrior, surrounded by pure souls at a time of his choosing, you know, and as a pure devotee, he got the boon of deciding when to leave his body. So whatever spiritual progress we make in life will be tested at the time of death. And if we can remember Krishna at death, we can be transferred back to Godhead, to Goloka Vrindavan, to Krishna Loka. And that is the outcome we are hoping for. That is what that means, a successful life. So in the Bhagavad Gita, in 8.5, it says, whoever at the time of death quits his body remembering me alone at once attains my nature. Of this, there is no doubt. So what is Krishna's nature that we're attaining, you know, if we remember him at the time of death? So Krishna is the purest of the pure, as it says in the purport. And if we constantly practice Krishna consciousness, we become the purest of the pure. We attain his nature, we attain his qualities, we attain our spiritual body made of knowledge, bliss, and eternality. And therefore we are qualified then to go to the supreme abode. You know, it's just like Prabhupada's analogy that if you put iron in the fire, over time it becomes less like iron and behaves more like fire. So we should live in such a way that at the time of death we can remember Krishna, because the fact is that all the experiences we have in our lives creates an impression, and you know, these impressions influence our thoughts, and you know, kind of they can become embedded in our memory as well, the more we meditate on them. So these impressions will come back to us at the time of death. And you know, kind of, if we have good impressions in our lives, they'll bring good thoughts. If we have bad impressions, they will bring unsavory thoughts, and spiritual impressions bring spiritual thoughts. So if we think of Krishna at the time of death, we immediately go to the spiritual world. If, however, we've spent, you know, our lives remembering Krishna for 2 hours a day and then forgetting him for the other 22 hours, then it might be a risk when we pass away that all those other things that we prioritize will come to the forefront of our consciousness, and we might miss our chance to leave the temporary material world behind. Because in that verse in Bhagavad Gita 8.5, it says, whoever at the time of death quits his body remembering me alone. So, you know, remembering Krishna alone, not all these other things that we've been involved in. So it's very important that we spend our lives practicing for that exam, which is the death. So, you know, if we engage in devotional service, we get one kind of nature, Krishna's nature. If we engage in sense gratification, we get another kind of nature. And that nature isn't our own nature, it's decided by the material modes of nature. You know, kind of, if we indulge in too much sense gratification, we might come under the modes of passion or illusion. So it's kind of desirable that we, as we're doing now, associate with devotees and constantly chant the Maha Mantra, being as attentive as possible. And, you know, regularly hear Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, you know, kind of our Rajguna, our Tamaguna will subside, our Sattva Guna will come to the forefront. And, you know, it's not enough just to be in the mode of goodness. We actually have to go on to the transcendental platform, Shuddha, pure goodness. You know, the mode of goodness is still material. It's the best mode to be in if you want to practice spiritual life, because, you know, if you're disturbed, then it's very difficult to practice Krishna consciousness, and the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance, unfortunately, are disturbing. They're very, very disturbing modes to be in. So it's good to come to the mode of goodness, but chanting the Maha Mantra will bring us on a transcendental platform, because, you know, the Maha Mantra is the same as God's form. The name of God is the same as God's form, so it is transcendental. So, you know, kind of absorption is the key factor, and full absorption in devotional service rather than just doing it for the sake of it. Because, you know, as sadhakas, I realize we're running out of time, so I just want to just make a couple more points. So as sadhakas, you know, when things are good, when things are fine, we come to the temple and we chant lots of rounds. But normally our devotional service is quite conditional. You know, when things aren't good, we become very, very demotivated. But we're trying to get on the platform of becoming a, you know, bona fide, proper first-class devotee. Under all circumstances, never gives up the feet of Krishna, you know, powers through, just, you know, goes through the drag, goes through the drudgery, and carries on giving unmotivated and hopefully uninterrupted devotional service. So, you know, to have a chance of getting on that platform, we do have to take shelter of the mode of goodness. You know, getting up as early as possible before the Brahma Muhurta, if possible, but, you know, at least by 4 a.m. Just offering everything to the Lord in the form of prasadam, and chanting with absorption and attention. You know, sort of sometimes we think, oh, I just need to get through my rounds, I just need to get them down. But actually it's about our feeling when we're chanting. You know, are we really crying out to the Lord? Do we feel anything when we're chanting his names? So, you know, it's very important to sort of be in that kind of mood. And of course, we want to take a spiritual master, like Murugari took Narad Muni, and, you know, his life was transformed from the lowest of the low to the highest of the high. And we want to please our spiritual master. We actually want to benefit his service. You know, we want to assist his service, we want to assist him in his mission, which is to assist Srila Prabhupada in his mission. And, you know, and also very importantly, it's very important to read and discuss Srila Prabhupada's books. Because like, you know, Bhishma Dev's death, Prabhupada's passing was also glorious, and it's just an appropriate moment to be speaking about that today. So Prabhupada also chose where he wanted to die. He went to leave his body in Vrindavan, because it's said that anyone who dies in the Dham attains the spiritual realm. So, and similar to Bhishma Dev, his consciousness and clarity of his thought didn't diminish. You know, up until the last minute, he was giving his commentary on the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you know, in such a weakened state, in such a weakened bodily state, but his mind was strong. You know, his spiritual force was strong. And his death, like his life, taught us what to do: be absorbed in service and think of Krishna. And his departure was exemplary because the life he lived was exemplary. It's not possible to, you know, kind of live a life in the modes of passion and ignorance, then expect to be in the mode of goodness and expect to think of Krishna on your deathbed. You know, kind of, you have to spend your whole life preparing for the exam. If you take the exam without preparing for it, then you're not going to get the achievements that you want. So, you know, Prabhupada he remains perfect in Krishna consciousness throughout his life, and he educated his disciples by his perfect example. And you know, one of the most important things to know as Vaishnavas is about humility, and Prabhupada embodied that humility. So he said, sometimes people give me very much credit that I have done wonderful throughout the whole world, but I do not know that I am a wonderful man. But I know one thing: I am speaking what Krishna has spoken. That's all. I am not making any addition or alteration. You know, so he said that in July 15th, 1975. And in 1977, while he was on deathbed, he said, you know, whatever I am saying is in my books. So read those books, you know, kind of, because obviously his disciples were upset that he was leaving his body, and the instruction was to read his books. So if we follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, you know, that sort of become expert in our sadhana, and read and discuss his books and preach Krishna's message in a sincere way, then we will also have the chance to pass our final examination. So yeah, I think I'll stop there. I think we've come to the end. I don't want to go on too long, but does anyone have any questions? I think I can take one.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, Panchali.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much for the wonderful points. Not a question, but just a comment, if I may.
Of course.
So because you were talking about the passing of Bhishmadev and Prabhupada, so one thing that comes to my mind is as you were speaking about humility and what they gave to us, is the common point of sacrifice in them. So throughout Bhishmadev's life, whether it's all his 3 vows or looking after, you know, the generations, getting the people, the princes married, or teaching them warfare right up to the end of his life. Even at the end of his life, he didn't take anything, he just gave the knowledge to lots of people. And very similarly, Prabhupada, even right till the last day of his life, he gave. Even when he was, you know, 70 years old, he wanted to give to people, sacrificing his ill health. He wanted to give to the people. He wanted to give Krishna to the people, and so did Bhishmadev. He gave Krishna and his knowledge to the rishis and the other people gathered around him right till his last breath. So the point of sacrifice stands out to me in both these great personalities. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you so much for that wonderful point. You are right that they just, you know, spent their whole lives giving, and their death actually exemplified their giving even at the last moment before they left their bodies. And it's like we say the prayer, don't we? Trinad abhi suni chena throrabi sahishnuna manina manadeva. You know, and it's all about kind of giving all respects to others and taking none for oneself, you know. So Bhishmadev, he didn't think, I'd quite like the throne, actually. I don't know why my father's marrying this woman, and I'm going to have to give this throne up to, you know, any issue. He never thought about himself. He didn't think, you know, what's best for me in this situation. He thought, okay, my father wants to get married, and he can't get married because, you know, kind of his potential father-in-law is saying no, because my, you know, daughter's sons won't get the throne. And he said, well, okay, I won't have any children, I won't get married. So the true example of humility, where you don't think about your own gain, you know, kind of what you're gaining or what you're losing. Yeah, it is exalted. That's why he's a Mahajan, you know. Most of us are not on that. Maybe I'm speaking for myself. I'm certainly not on that platform. So, you know, kind of somehow we always end up thinking about ourselves, you know, still. So it will take a few years of practice in the mode of goodness to attain that kind of mentality. But thank you so much for your points. You've made a very important point about, you know, the selflessness that we need to demonstrate throughout our lives. Okay, is there anything?
May I add, sorry, may
Yes,
I
please.
add on to that, please? What Panchali Mataji said about sacrifice and humility, because, you know, Krishna says in the Gita that he is the enjoyer of sacrifice. So sacrifice is so very, very important in our lives. And to see the sacrifice that some of these great Mahajans and so have done, it really is wonderful.
Thank you so much for that valuable point, you know, about sacrifice, because the sacrifice for this age is chanting the Maha Mantra, you know, kind of that's the sacrifice for this age. You know, you're giving up your time, you're giving up, pursuing sense gratification and, all those other things. We're not just supposed to chant 16 rounds. That's just the bare minimum. So, we're supposed to chant as many rounds as we can. So, that is a sacrifice, actually. We don't have the wherewithal to perform the sacrifices that they did in the previous yug. We just don't have the trained brahmanas. We don't have, we can't sort of spend millions and millions and millions of pounds and give away, 20,000 elephants and things like that. We just don't have the wherewithal in Kali Yuga. So the sacrifice is to chant the Maha Mantra. And yes, also, as you say, that Krishna is the enjoyer of the sacrifices, so he will enjoy kind of whatever sacrifice we've done. It's not to our detriment, it's actually to our benefit, because Krishna is receiving them. Thank you so much for your comment.
Thank you very much, Panchali and Pramla for all your wonderful questions and comments. I know we have exhausted our time. Mataji, thank you very much for taking us through all the rishis and the various Mahajanas, and I really enjoyed the comparison between Bhishma Dev and Srila Prabhupada, and what a day. I mean, this is where else would we find this perfect time? So thank you very much. I'd like to introduce you to two of our mentors, which is Path Prabhuji and Mansi Ganga Mataji. I think she was there, but I think she's left. But Path Prabhu, they are the pillars of this group, and we are what we are because of them. So Path Prabhu, kindly please close this.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji. Such a nice and wonderful class you are given. Yes, thank you very much. Also, like already you discussed about the last time of the Bhishma Dev and how the great sages, the great rishis are there, because there is his teaching by own example. So that also by the head of Yudhishthira Maharaj, all the Pandavas are there. Instruction of by Lord Sri Krishna, you will come and teach. The same thing also happened in Ramayana when Ravan going to be die at the last breath. Also, Ramchandra told Lakshmana and also Vibhishana to learn the politics, Rajaniti, the politics from the Ravana. So that's the time, because although he is the enemy, because they are coming, but they are playing that role. They have nothing behind it, but by the God's instruction, they are playing that one. The same thing he's teaching. Ravan also giving very nice teaching to all of us by through the Ravan. Also, thank you very much, Mataji. Also, you describe all the sages and rishis there, and like also you should discuss about all the Dwadash Mahajan, the 12 Mahajan. They knows the Krishna by Tattva, by the basic, and also one of them is Bhishma Dev. So thank you very much, Mataji, for this group. And also I thanks all the devotees here to assembling here. I request all the devotees, please unmute yourself and chant Hare Krishna mantra for a glorification of his heart. Adi Ganga Devidasi, please join.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vancha kalpatarubhashcha kripa sindhu evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Adi Ganga Mataji ki
Jai.
Iskon Eldoret ki jai.
Jai.
Thank you, Mataji, for a wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Manji.
you. Thank you, Mataji.
Haribol.
Thank you, Kamal Prabhuji, for introducing Mataji to us and even attending this session. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Kartika.